Hi friends, welcome to another Reddit Rev episode. Please subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying the content, and please share it with your friends if you can. I'd really appreciate it. Also, please leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the episode. Now let's get started with today's stories.
My wife had an affair. How do I figure this whole thing out? Whew, where to start? I didn't post this when it happened because I knew all I'd get were people saying to lawyer up, delete her from Facebook, or hit the gym. First of all, my wife and I started drifting apart a few years ago. She quit her job to go to grad school and to stay at home with our son his last couple of years before kindergarten. I'd work all day and she would either go to school or study nearly every night. I worked a lot of extra hours to make ends meet, and when we had arguments, I'd even mentioned a few times that I hoped she wasn't just using me to get through school. During this time between us, honestly, things weren't bad. They were just okay. Definitely not passionate like we used to be though. I thought that I was to be expected after 13 years of the same person. I never went a day without telling her I loved her and was completely blindsided on June 27th when I saw her looking for apartments on her laptop. When I saw her, she freaked out and started firing off text messages like crazy and said we need to go talk. She flat out told me she didn't love me anymore and was leaving me. She had split all of the bills and wanted to share custody of my son. She had obviously been planning this for a while. I told her I still loved her, but I wasn't going to beg her to stay because I didn't want that held over my head in any future arguments. On the way home, I asked her who she was texting. She got nervous and mentioned 2 friends. I was in shock, so I just went to work and stayed there until about 3 a.m. The next day at work, I got suspicious and logged into our shared AT&T account and looked to see who she was texting. It was a number I didn't recognize, and it certainly wasn't either of the friends she mentioned. What was worse was that they had exchanged 350 messages in the 12 hours before she told me she was leaving. Even more curious, I started looking through past bills and found they exchanged 15,000 texts between mid-March and late June. She called me at work to check on me, and I asked who it was. She admitted it was a detective who she works with. She's not a cop, but the place she works with has an interagency agreement with nearly every law enforcement group in our part of the state that allows her to see lots of open case information and requires her to work with law enforcement daily. I was pissed and asked if she was having an affair. Her response was, "I don't think so. You should know me better than that." When pressed, she said he was just a good friend and all they talked about was work-related stuff and bullshit. I pointed out that in the time they had exchanged 15,000 texts, she had sent me 150. I told her that if she put a sliver of the effort she put into talking to him, into talking to me, our relationship would probably be in a lot better shape. She eventually started telling me she just talked to him about our relationship and his own relationship with his wife. That night, when we got home, she flipped 180 degrees. She was now willing to work things out with me if we went to counseling, but she kept mentioning that we needed a clean slate. I told her that if that was going to happen, she was going to have to cut ties with the guy at work, and she agreed. And the next day, I logged back into the wireless account and see they're still at it. They talked for the entire half hour it takes her to get to work and exchanged a few hundred more text messages that day. I called her pissed and told her to end it, and she promised she would. At this point, I'm absolutely convinced there's way more going on than she's admitting to. I know she went out to dinner with this detective and his partner a few weeks earlier and didn't come back for 3.5 hours. I started digging. I managed to get a very large portion of her deleted text messages. What I read was awful. As far back as April, he was talking about going to get drinks together, but he wasn't sure if he could control himself. But he better not say anything more or she'd figured out his evil plan. On the way to our anniversary dinner in April, he's texting her, telling her what she should order, and after some joke, he remarks, "How could you doubt my sexuality since I've been all over you this past week?" I read her some of the text messages she had sent, and she turned white as a ghost. She admitted to some prior flirting, but that's it. She promised. In the meantime, I am fuming mad and start asking her more details. Eventually, she admits that they met at their office after happy hour a few weeks prior and made out. She admitted to sexting him multiple times. She admitted planning to sleep with him at an out-of-town convention that was coming up. At this point, her plan to leave me was starting to make far more sense. If we were separated, I suppose she could fuck him with a clear conscience. I told her to end all contact. The next morning, when she woke up, I told her I wanted her to call him and tell him on the couch. I'm gonna start over that section. If we were separated, I suppose she could fuck him with a clear conscience. I told her to end all contact. The next morning when she woke up, I told her I wanted her to call him and tell him on the phone with me there. I told her not to warn him beforehand. She called and left him a voicemail. That afternoon, I was exhausted and fell asleep on the couch. She starts emailing him and does exactly what I told her not to do. She warned him that I wanted to hear her tell him it was over so he wouldn't call her back. The rest of that thread of emails is what tears me up. She talks about how she's so sorry I found the deleted text messages and how she needed to end it for now so she could at least tell herself she tried to work things out with me. He replies back all pissed and mentions that he had also told his quote-unquote pregnant wife he was leaving her and that they planned on hiding the relationship for 6 months to a year, then they'd get married and have babies. The shitbird talks about wanting to buy a house so he can move her and my son in with him. The dude got real nasty with her and her responses were, "Sorry, right now I have to abide by my name's wishes." We've been to 2 counseling sessions since his surfaced, and we have a 3rd one scheduled for Wednesday. The first few weeks were amazing. We got along great, had amazing, passionate sex, talked more than we have in years. Since then, however, she almost refuses to talk with me about what she did. She always says she's too exhausted from work. She does have a very emotionally taxing job, or one of another million other excuses. If I do bring it up, she doesn't answer any of my questions, like how did it start, what were you getting from him that you weren't getting from me, etc. All she does is break down crying and calling herself a horrible person. This whole time I felt like I've been ripped in two from the inside. Half of me wants to hug her and never let her go. The other half of me feels absolutely betrayed. I feel like I fucked up by not making her leave, at least for a little while so I could figure things out. After 5 weeks, I still don't feel any better about the affair, or more importantly, the constant lies about it. I'm convinced she never would have said a word about Detective Shitbird. Alright, let's start over. After 5 weeks, I still don't feel any better about the affair, or more importantly, the constant lies about it. I'm convinced she never would have said a word about Detective Shitbird if I haven't started digging. So tell me guys, is this person worth trusting? I believe she's done with him. He's tried contacting her since she told him to stop, but she's ignored all of his attempts. But I have a horrible feeling that she'll just do it again with someone else. I know she's capable of either completely writing off our commitment to one another, or at least she's able to justify the affair to herself. How do I figure out what to do? I don't want to be miserable forever, but I also know that she was once my soulmate, and maybe she can be again. TLDR, wife had an affair with coworker. Never mind, that part is the end.
I hope you enjoyed our video. It's always a pleasure creating these stories, and if you liked what you saw, please take the time to show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already done so. Sharing with your friends is also greatly appreciated. Let me know in the comments section below what you think of our videos. I'm all ears. Be sure to check back soon for more original Reddit stories every day on Reddit Rev. Until then, stay awesome, my friend.